I feel like I keep telling you guys that I don't know what movies are about, but I watch them anyway, and I love them. I posted another episode today on Godzilla Minus One, and like that movie, I think I saw one trailer for this movie, and I think the trailer that I saw it on TikTok, but I didn't know what it was actually about. What I did know was that the English dub cast has a lot of really good actors and actresses, so that was one of many things that really had me diving in head first to see this movie. Hi friends, welcome back, or just welcome if you're new here. I'm here as a friend to give you my spoiler-free thoughts on the latest movie I've watched in theaters or cozied up at home. If you're looking for my thoughts on a specific movie, DM me on Instagram, let me know in the comments section on YouTube, or let me know on the podcast. Tune in for new episodes every Friday, and don't forget to subscribe on YouTube and follow the podcast. Definitely follow the podcast if you haven't already, because I'm not going to be posting any episodes on YouTube for the rest of the month. Stay until the end of the episode so you know what I'm going to be watching and what we're going to be talking about next. I think it's easy for me to feel silly going into a movie not really knowing what it's about, but it's just as easy to look at the studio, actors, actresses, director, and have blind faith that you'll be watching a good movie. Lucky for me, both movies I watched last weekend are incredible. Let's get into today's episode on the latest Studio Ghibli film, The Boy and the Heron. Mahito, a young 12-year-old boy, struggles to settle in a new town after his mother's death. However, when a talking heron informs Mahito that his mother is still alive, he enters an abandoned tower in search of her, which takes him to another world. Believe me, it is not my intention to watch and talk about movies that are heavy, you guys. It just happens, and then I get into my feelings. Let's be real though, the heavy themes and feelings are to be expected with a Miyazaki film, but damn, with that life experience I feel like I've been mentioning a lot lately, I'm feeling attacked. Pain, suffering, loss is essential to life, to living. Like, damn, no need to say it out loud though. Legendary director Hayao Miyazaki is behind some of the greatest animated movies. My personal favorites include Princess Mononoke, Spirited Away, and Howl's Moving Castle. The Boy and the Heron is the first Hayao Miyazaki feature film in 10 years, and he delivers that magic and the stunning visuals that we've come to expect. We just mentioned a lot without talking too much, but I want to expand on these topics more before we get into the acting. Yeah, we're going back to those heavy themes of pain and suffering because why not? Really though, the story it's interesting. If you've listened to or watched the episode on the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes that I posted, then you might remember that I said the movie presented elements that were open to audience interpretation. It's the same here for this movie. Yes, the story is pretty cut and dry, but as an audience, we have the opportunity to take even more from that story. I love to see the complex idea that when offered an easy, perfect life, the acceptance that suffering is part of the human experience. The Boy and the Heron follows Mahito Maki after his mother passes, and it's that loss that pushes his story. I feel like I talked about it a lot in the Godzilla Minus One episode, but I mentioned that as much as these stories of loss, grief, and pain really hit home, my favorite thing that comes out of these kinds of stories is forgiveness and hope. Now again, maybe it's that life experience talking, but there's something healing about experiencing these feelings through story. Miyazaki does a fantastic job of leading us through Mahito's emotions, his loss and how closed off he is, to the end of his journey. Not only is the storytelling grounded emotionally, but it's got that signature whimsical magic that completely immerses you in a world that is brand new, but all too familiar. When I saw that this movie was showing in IMAX, the first Studio Ghibli film to be released in IMAX, I had to get tickets, and I am glad that I did. There was something breathtaking about seeing the hand-painted backgrounds on a screen so big. I definitely had a small emotional reaction because it's just incredible. Honestly, the entire movie looks incredible, and I wish there were more 2D animated films. A technique that is always really neat to see and feel is when the creator uses something like camera angles, lenses, or in this case, hand-drawn art to distort the visuals so we as an audience can experience what the character is experiencing. The opening of the movie is so impactful, and this technique really lends to the weight of the moment and the impact it has on the characters and the story. I linked a TikTok below from Jordan, and no, I'm not going to try to pronounce his username. He talks about a lot, and one of those things is the director Miyazaki, and I think everything he says is so interesting to consider having seen the film. Now, we've made it to the acting, and you already know who we're going to talk about, but before we do, the entire cast is spectacular. I really love hearing some familiar voices like Batista and Florence Pugh, but I also loved experiencing familiar actors that sounded so different from their natural voice from what I'm used to hearing in interviews and other projects. I'm talking about Mark Hamill, Willem Dafoe, and the man we're going to be talking about, Robert Pattinson. I linked a TikTok below from Justin at jbrandolph1995 on TikTok, and he thoughtfully expresses exactly how I feel about this performance in a clear and concise way. Check his video out because I'm still shocked that that is Robert Pattinson. At the risk of sounding silly, I'm going to be honest. I knew most of the cast, but I didn't know really who was who. I knew he was in the movie, but I didn't know who he was when I was in the theater. Honestly, I assumed the Heron was Willem Dafoe for much longer than I'd like to admit. I thought it was Willem Dafoe doing, the voices he does. But then the more I listened to the voice, the more I realized it wasn't him and that it was Robert Pattinson, and y'all. Though I will say Willem Dafoe as the Pelican was honestly just as surprising when I heard him in the theater, but he didn't have that many lines of dialogue, but I do think he did a fantastic job with the time he had. I agree with Justin when he says that he feels like Pattinson set the new standard that celebrities should be held to when it comes to voiceover work. In the throw Chris Pratt and Awkwafina into everything era, I couldn't agree more. We've talked about Pratt before, you probably know how I feel already, but the way he immediately came to mind when I was watching this TikTok. Like Justin said, I think it's very easy to dismiss Pattinson as Edward from Twilight, and I agree. As someone who has seen all of the Twilight movies, Tenet, The Batman, The Goblet of Fire, it's very easy for me to almost fall into that. All right, so what did I think about the movie? Let's get it all together and wrap it up. If you're a fan of Miyazaki or Studio Ghibli, honestly, even if you've never seen one of their movies before, I'd say this is a must watch. It's such an incredible story with stunning visuals and a score that really stands out. I watched the final teaser, and if you're a fan of the previously mentioned director or studio, I would check that video out. I linked it below because it's so emotional to see so much of his work represented and where it leads. In this final teaser, there are quotes throughout, but one of the quotes toward the end I feel really encapsulates this movie. Carlos Aguilar from The Playlist says, quote, "Animation's greatest alchemist has gifted us his most personal story yet." Now, I couldn't find exactly where this quote was from, but what a way to word it. This is truly a gift, and it feels like one. You remember that blind faith that I mentioned at the top of the video? Well, that, coupled with considering how I felt walking out of the theater and still feel, I'm surprised at how many negative reviews I read that brought up how aggressively weird the movie is and how slow it starts and how quickly it becomes chaotic. I think it's always important to understand that everything is a matter of opinion, and again, that awesome opportunity to interpret a story based on you and how you see life, really. Now, I am by no means saying I completely understood the movie from start to finish, but again, that life experience helps me to to connect the dots and see the bigger picture in a way that I understand it. The comment that stood out to me was The Boy and the Heron isn't Spirited Away caliber. Spirited Away is one of my favorites, and it's not, but it's a strong movie that stands on its own. I didn't really know where to put this in the episode, so I'm kind of glad I found this comment. I like magic, monsters, animals, ghosts, dragons. I mean, it's a thrown together list, but that's why I listed those 3 films as my favorites, because it's my preference. Would I watch this movie over Princess Mononoke? Probably not, but that doesn't mean it's a bad movie or that it should stand next to and be compared to movies that I've loved for over a decade. This is an amazing cinematic accomplishment from a legendary director and a beloved studio. Even still, not everything is for everyone, and maybe this movie isn't for you, even if you love the studio and the director. I think it's easy to explain the basic ideas of this movie, but it's not so easy to explain the intricacies and the details that were being shown. Have you seen The Boy and the Heron yet? If you saw the movie already, what did you think about it? I went on a bit of a rant there for a second, but to wrap it up, this is an incredible movie. It explores loss and suffering in a visually gorgeous way. We get to experience Mahito's arc dealing with these heavy themes up close and personal. The score is beautiful and the voice acting is immersive, and we all know by now Robert Pattinson didn't just phone it in. I've been seeing online that he did the prep and recorded all his lines in 2 days? That's crazy. Alright, Ghibli fans, that brings us to the end of the episode. If you're listening on the podcast, thank you very much. Check out the description below for a link to the podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, please consider leaving the video a thumbs up. As always, thank you so much for hanging out with me and for catching today's episode. You can listen to new episodes every Friday. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube, follow on Spotify, follow me on Instagram, all the things so you don't miss out on the next movie we're going to be talking about. If you want to know my thoughts on Godzilla -1, then you can check that episode out. I'll put a tab in the top corner on the YouTube video, and if you're listening on the podcast, you can check that episode out there too. There will be no more episodes posted on YouTube for the rest of the month. All of the following episodes will be podcast exclusives that you can listen to on Spotify. Totally Killer, that time-traveling slasher movie I've been putting off because I just keep falling behind. Well, we're caught up now, so we're going to finally talk about it. After that, Rebel Moon. I've been talking about this movie for the last few episodes. I'm really excited about this one, but given my track record, and I'm looking at you across the Spider-Verse, I need to brace myself emotionally and mentally because this movie is a part 1. I also completely forgot about the Netflix movie Leave the World Behind until my sister mentioned it the other day. In my defense, Netflix is acting like a fool. Not the app, just the company and their password sharing nonsense. So I completely forgot that we even had Netflix. Thank you, sister, for reminding me about this movie. Honestly, with that cast, I have no idea how I forgot about the movie, but we'll be watching it soon. It's a Wonderful Knife is the holiday movie I'm going to watch with my family. This movie looks fun, and after watching Thanksgiving, I'm down for another holiday-themed slasher. Plus, I'm a sucker for slasher costumes and masks, and this one looks really interesting. Once again, there will be no more episodes posted to YouTube for the rest of the month. So The Boy and the Heron and the Godzilla -1 episodes will be the last episodes posted to YouTube until January when I come back with the 2023 recap video. So I hope you'll join me on YouTube and the podcast, especially for those exclusive episodes. If you're watching on YouTube, let me know your favorite Studio Ghibli film. Like I mentioned earlier, my favorites are Spirited Away, Howl's Moving Castle, and Princess Mononoke. In this video essay, I will explain to you why I love these movies. Just kidding. Honestly, guys, if I were to talk about why I love these movies so much, we're gonna be here all day. I would love to hear from you guys, so please let me know your thoughts on today's episode or just your thoughts on the movie that we talked about today in the comments section on YouTube or on Spotify. I've got the Q&A, I've got polls, so check it all out. I want to know what you think, so let me know wherever you are listening or on Instagram at a.rocket.review, and I'll talk to you on the podcast next week. But until the next episode, spread positivity, be safe, take care of yourself, and happy holidays. I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.